Hello everyone, my name is Katri Gansham and today's my presentation topic is persona and shadow as shadow archetypes. This is my introduction. Table of content. In this presentation, I will discuss about the introduction of archetypal criticism, the two archetypes, persona and shadow. For example, in the novel Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, then movie Fight Club, and conclusion. Archetypal criticism. It is the in literary criticism, the term archetype denotes the recurrent narrative design patterns of action, character types, themes, images, which are identifiable in a wide variety of works of literature as well as myth, dreams, and even social rituals. The literary theory of the archetypes was the treatment of myth by a group of comparative anthropologists at Cambridge University, especially James Fraser, who is famous for his work The Golden Bough, and Carl Jung for his archetypal philosophy, and the experience in the life of our very ancient ancestor, which Carl Jung mentions, survive in the collective unconscious of the human race and are expressed in myth, religion, dreams, and private fantasies, as well as in work of literature. Archetypal literary criticism was given impetus by Bodkin's archetypal patterns in poetry that was published in 1934. And the archetypal literary criticism flourished in 1950s and 16s. Some archetypal critics have dropped Jung's theory of the collective unconscious as the deep source of this pattern. In the words of Northrop Frye, this theory is unnecessary hypothesis, and the recurrent archetypes are simply there how they got there, however they got there. So, the persona archetype, the persona, this is the outward face we present to the world. This hides our real face. This, according to Jung, is the conformity archetype. This is the public face we put on to our peers, our bosses, our community, and sometimes even our families. This is not who we really are. Originally, the word persona meant a mask worn by actors to indicate the role they played on this level. It is both a protective covering and an asset in mixing with the other people. Civilized society depends on interaction between people through the persona. The I usually deals aspect of ourselves that we present to the outside world. The persona is a functional complex that comes into existence for reasons of adaptation of personal convenience. The persona is what which it reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is. There is this shadow archetype. The shadow archetype, this is animal side of our personality. Freud called this the ID. This is the source of both our creative and destructive energies. This is the line with the theory of evolution. This archetype reflects the predisposition that had once upon a time survival values. The felicity that we are forced to live with the endure every day becomes a sort of a trap. When we are made to go against our natural selves, we begin to question who we are and oftentimes find ourselves in the middle of an identity crisis. Jung stated it could actually be psychologically determinantal to our well-being when our environmental does not support us in a use of our dominant function. This is called falsification of type. When we are forced to live our daily lives presenting a mask or different persona, then we are comfortable with this becomes our abnormal norm. The shadow is a normal problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspect of the personality as percent entry. So here is this example of this persona and shadow archetype. The novel Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. In this novel, we find the both persona and shadow archetype. In Dr. Jekyll is the uh, present persona archetype as he only he choose to live as a sophisticated man in front of society, while he is actually not that type of person. In his inside he is a wild person, and through inventing a medicine to separate his personality, he becomes Mr. Edward Hyde. That is the shadow personality of his. In similar way, in the movie Fight Club, directed by Edward Fincher, uh, the David Fincher, uh, there is this two characters. First is the protagonist of the film is simply called as the narrator and have no name in the entire movie. He represents the persona archetype as he buys the all type of things that a regular person who in a working class buy, and have a home and all that type of thing that in a society everybody requires. But in his split personality, he creates his different identity that is Tyler Durden. We can say he this is the shadow personality of him that is not social society loving person, and he lives in his own way, and he represents masculinity, and the he overthrows the social norms. The shadow is a normal problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considering a moral effort. To become conscious, it involves the I recognize the dark aspect of the personality. Uh, it- he takes a name, earns a title, exercise a function. He is this or that in a certain sense of this real, yet in relation to the essential individuality of the person concerned, it is only a secondary reality, a compromise formation in making which other often have greater share than he. Here, the shadow personality and the persona of uh, Dr. Jekyll we can find in this passage. It's from the novel. Between these two, I now felt I had to choose. My two natures had a memory in common, but all other faculties were most unequal shared between them. Jekyll, who was composite and now with the most sensitive apprehension, now with her greedy gusto, projected and shared in the pleasure and adventures of Hyde. But Hyde was a different to Jekyll, or but remembered him as the mountain bandit remembers the cave in which he conceals himself from pursuit. The shadow is composed for the most part of repressed desire and uncivilized impulse and moral inferior motives, childish fantasy and resentments. all those things about oneself one is not proud of. And we find that in both the example as Dr. Jekyll hides his desire and the uncivilized impulse, and he creates his shadow self. Conclusion: the realization of shadow is inhibited by the persona. To the degree that we identify with a bright persona, the shadow is correspondingly dark. Thus, the shadow and persona stands in a compensatory relation, and the conflict between them is invariably present in an outbreak of a neurosis. The characteristic depressed at such a time indicates the need to realize that one is not all one pretends or wish to be. Responsibility for the shadow rests with the ego. That is why the shadow is a moral problem. It is one thing to realize what is looks like what we are capable of. It is quite something else to determine what we can live out or with. The shadow is not, however, only the dark underside of the personality. It also consists of the instincts, ability, and positive moral quality that have long been buried or never been conscious. The shadow is a morally somewhat inferior, primitive, unadapted, and awkward, not wholly bad. It even contains childish or primitive qualities which would, in a way, vitalize and ambitious human existence, but conversation forbids. This is my work cited, and this is the response that I got from ChatGPT about the persona and shadow archetype. It is the definition and the information in here is very good. It clears the meaning and the concept of shadow and persona archetypes. Also, in the archetypal criticism, it gives the common information about what is the archetypal criticism, and also about some of its good thing. Thank you. Now you can ask me questions.
Kansham, my question is that how can an individual's persona be challenged or established in literature or in real life?
The individual's persona is the thing that he puts up in front of society, and when he is depressed, or we can say that he goes all his limit to try to convince the society that his persona is what he puts in front of others is real. As long as that maintains, he stays in that way. Otherwise he can oppressed by it and become what he really is, and can input his shadow identity also.
Kansham, my question is can you elaborate something more about how shadow archetype reflects animal side?
Yes, in this shadow archetype, the one movie was there that was split. In that movie, the protagonist have a 30 or 40 personality of his that is psychological disorder that he have, and in that he have a child's identity and sophisticated man's identity and even a beast identity also. So we can say that those are all his feelings or desire that is oppressed, and is in a corner that he puts, and when he loses his control, it comes out. Thank you.